This is the GT Omega DDX. It's a wheel stand. Wheel stands are compact sim racing cockpits primarily for offices, living rooms, bedrooms, places where space is valuable, and a full sim setup like this often can't be abided. However, the DDX promises to be heavy duty, built to take high strength force feedback wheels with rock solid rigidity, adjustability and a chair link included as standard, so you can hook your office chair up to it to stay planted when you brake. Ideal for those that want to step into sim racing without requiring big floor plan commitments. I started sim racing on a desk. Something like this might have been better for me if I'd had one at the time. Let's try it out, see what it's made of, and see how much of a full sim racing experience can be achieved by it. Please note the DDX seen in this video was provided by GT Omega. As one of my main channel partners, their support is always appreciated, but remember, this is a review, not an ad. I've highlighted weaknesses in GT Omega's stuff before, and they're not the sensitive defensive sort, so I don't think for a second that I'm not going to call it like it is. Watch the whole video before making a decision, but if you do proceed to buy, then you can get 5% off with code DannyLee at checkout on GT Omega's site. Check the description for more information on that. The DDX wheel stand will arrive in a fairly compact package, but don't be deceived, clearly the Tetris World Champion works at the factory this came from, because when you've extracted all the bits out and laid them out in front of you, there's quite a lot. All the components are well finished, however, smoothly cut and powder coated. The pedal tray looks nicely reinforced and uses a great mounting bolt pattern which should be friendly to what I'm planning to put on it. Assembly took me around an hour to complete. Bolts of slightly different sizes are used, so you have to pay attention at all stages just to make sure you don't accidentally mix them up. The instructions are compact, but apparently not complete. The one I received says nothing about attaching the chair link. The chair link is a device which cups the wheels of your office chair to hold you still when you brake. I had to look at product photos of the DDX online to figure out how to attach it. Thankfully it ain't rocket science, but I didn't like having to figure it out. I checked GT Omega's online manual just in case I was missing a page, but no, that too says nothing about the chair link. I'm confident they'll work on correcting this once I point this out to them, but still. All the nuts and bolts supplied have serrated flanges. This is great for rigidity and sturdiness because they will bite into the frame and resist slippage, but it will come at the cost of scraping the paint away in certain areas, so expect some scuffs and scars if you have to adjust it down the road. But it's worth it to lock everything down so it won't budge. I am glad they've used serrated nuts and bolts pretty much across the board. It does make a genuine difference to holding everything like cement. A shifter mount is also included as standard. It can be mounted further forward or back and is attached to the steering column, so it will raise or lower along with the steering wheel. You can't raise or lower the shifter plate independently, but unless your shifter's 2 feet tall, you should be able to get on with it. Adjustability looks to be fairly good all round within the limits of such a thing. The wheelbase column extends upwards and forwards, which tends to cover the most likely body proportions. The wheel plate tilts a fair amount, but has no forward or backward travel, so if you have exceptionally short or long arms, then you may be slightly unlucky. The pedal tray has several incline notches and the ability to shift forwards and backwards. Though these all require the use of tools to do, adjustments can be fiddly in the initial stage, so if you're looking for a wheel stand to share between differently sized people, you'll need to rely on the relatively quick adjustment of a wheel column and chair link to make that viable. One important aspect of a DDX that you need to know is that it does not fold away deck chair style like some other wheel stands and portable cockpits do. This is fixed. Sturdiness comes at a cost, and the price paid is the fold-away capability that you would normally find with a wheel stand, so it's important that you know that here. This is where the DDX is going to be situated in my test. This empty spot I've made next to my desk, which is also from GT Omega as it happens, with my GT Omega office chair and GT Omega Prime sim rig in the other corner, this office is starting to look like a blooming GT Omega showroom. I'm going to be putting the DDX through one of the best tests I could possibly give it as a sim racer. I'm going to set up a 12 lap stint with the Porsche Cup on iRacing with my regular sim rig using a high-end VRS Wheelbase and Pedals. Then I'm going to transfer that very same equipment onto the DDX and do the exact same thing. Then we'll see how the lap times and consistency compare, as well as my overall thoughts on how much of that full-fat sim racing experience the DDX can deliver in half the space and a fraction of the cost. Mounting my high-end VRS kit to the DDX was relatively straightforward. I had to modify the steel wheel plate by drilling some extra holes to fit the VRS mounting bracket, but that's not the DDX's fault. It's a niche direct drive system and I wouldn't have expected it to be accommodated as standard. But if you have a mainstream Fanatec, Moser, Logitech, Frostmaster setup and the likes, you won't need to do anything like that. It will just bolt straight on. In terms of ergonomics, there's just enough leeway for me to be fairly comfortable when sitting in the setup, but here's a tip if you're using certain high-end pedals that might come in handy for you, because it did for me. I managed to sneak an extra couple of inches of legroom by mounting the pedals as far back as possible, but using additional bolts with washers to act as clamps in the midsection, because there were no holes further back for the pedals to bolt to. The back of the pedals is unbolted. The pedal cutouts on the DDX lend themselves well to this stuff and it works great. When driving, it's not going to be as comfortable in something like this. It's not going to be as immersive and natural feeling as a full setup, but it definitely feels solid, especially resistant to side rocking, and I feel virtually zero wobble or flex during driving. I was really astonished by how planted the wheel stand itself felt. Ultimately, the camera never lies, and it captures some wobbling and jittering, but really, it defied my detection when I was actually driving. It made me feel like it was rock solid, especially for a small frame, and that's the most important thing. I have not turned down or weakened the VRS wheelbase at all for this test. It's at full power, it's a high-end wheelbase which is being run at exactly the same feedback power and settings as it did when it was on the full rig. My brake pedal has been toned down from 80% force to 50% force due to the office chair I'm using rather than a fixed bucket seat, but I'm still using the exact same physical firmness in the pedal. So then, the direct test results. On my normal GT Omega Prime setup, the average lap time was a 1:48.2. It felt under control and at no point did I have to make any saves. It was consistent and controllable. On the GT Omega DDX, driving did feel slightly more precarious, unsure and unpredictable with a couple of minor brake lockups and wobbles, but it still felt like I was really nailing it with high aggression. My average lap time here was a 1:48.1, meaning my DDX stint was 1.2 seconds faster than my Prime stint. Yeah, I know, somehow I actually went faster on my DDX stint than I did on my Prime stint. It's not that much of a mystery. The Prime had the disadvantage of going first, the DDX followed it with the benefit of slightly more muscle memory and practice, but the Prime run was still done after acclimatizing. It was far from going in blind. It's a car and track combo that I know well. How impressive is that, to even be in the same bracket as the full rig? Conditions were identical, neither stint had any in-sim advantage, it was as close to a true test as possible. The conclusion to draw here is not that the DDX is better than my Prime for sim racing, or even on par, of course not, there are factors other than how fast I went. The conclusion to draw is that the DDX can get you quite far when it comes to outright performance. They did say it can handle high force feedback direct drives. I was skeptical, but I can confirm it absolutely can. Jumbo jet manufacturers tell their pilots to do crazy stuff at industry air shows, not because they expect customers to be doing crazy stuff in their planes, but just to demonstrate that it's capable of far beyond what's normal. This test is no different. You're probably not likely to be pairing this wheel stand up with equipment like this, but if you're forced to, it will handle it. The wheel stand is so solid that the biggest issue will be your office chair twisting. It didn't cause a problem much during my test because I was engaging my core muscles to resist it, but that would be annoying and tiring over the long term. If I was testing for longer, then I'd definitely be doing something with bungee cords, straps or clamps to lock it down a bit so I could relax a bit more during the drive. If I did a 2-hour race like this, then I'd have a 12-pack stomach, but also a chiropractor loyalty card. I was about to add a sentence or two to say that the DDX would be a prime candidate for a seat frame add-on so you could stick a proper seat onto it, but it appears it already exists, it's already available in their shop, so you have the further option of expanding it if your circumstances relax in the future. It will be more comfortable and natural with a proper seat frame add-on. If it's built to the same level as the frame itself, then it should be pretty good. Overall, I'm really impressed with the DDX, more than I thought I'd be. Being able to punch equally hard on the DDX as I did on my Prime with a difficult car on a difficult track, even though it's over a relatively short stint, is nothing short of impressive. It's not incorrectly named. It can happily handle my high-grade force feedback wheel and pedals, and I'd readily recommend this to you if it suits your circumstances. And that's it for now. I hope this was entertaining and surprising. Feel free to comment or ask anything that I failed to answer. And if you do proceed to buy from GT Omega, then don't forget the 5% discount code Danny Lee. Cheers again.